Recording time. Welcome to the last serve episode of 2024. Today's meal will actually be a recipe that I got from my mother. It is a soup that she cooked for me since I was very young. It's kind of a spin on one of Olive Garden's soups. It's just sausage, potato, bacon, kale, with just like a cream base. Over time, I've kind of thought of new ways that I could improve the recipe. So yeah, let's get started.
All right, starting this recipe off, we will begin with preparing some garnishes. We have about half a pack of bacon here, a little bit more, that we will be using for the entire soup. Half a pack seems like a lot, but as you can see in the pot, it really doesn't take up much space. We're going to be cooking them in the same pot that we boiled the soup in. Here I'm showing you the sausage that we'll be using later, but not just yet. So you're going to want to cook the bacon on about medium to high heat, stirring pretty frequently. While those cook down, we will be preparing our next garnish, which is green onion. This is one of the improvements that I said I will be making to the recipe. I really enjoy the taste of green onion, and I think that by using the green side of the onion for just like a garnish when the soup is ready, we can get some nice natural onion flavor. And using the more pale white side of the onion, we could stir it in with our meats while it's cooking to reduce it and get some sweetness out of it. So we're just going to slice them fine and put them aside for now. Next up are our potatoes. This is just a regular russet potato that we're going to be fully peeling with no skin left. I have about 6 potatoes here. They're not all the same size, and they don't have to be, obviously. We can just use whatever we have. This next part is another improvement that I've thought of for this soup, and it's actually dicing the potatoes. Normally when my mother makes the soup, she rough chops the potatoes, and then when the soup's almost done, she mashes them in the pot. The reason I'm dicing them is because I'm actually thinking to fry them before I add them into the soup, just to add some texture and a little bit of flavor. You definitely don't have to be extra like me and do it like this, but it's just something that I've wanted to do for a while. Now that the bacon is done and all the fat is fully rendered out, we will cook our sausage in it. This is ground hot Italian sausage, and we're just going to carefully our sausage into our pot. Now we're going to want to break it apart and make sure that it's evenly spread amongst the pot, getting a good color on the underside. Try not to flip it too early because we need it to brown on the underside. Now that we let the pork fry for a little bit, we can add our green onion stems. These are the bits that you kind of don't want to eat raw, so we're just going to let them sit with the pork for a little bit, and they'll slowly, render and become a little sweet and soften up. Now is when we're gonna fry our potatoes, but obviously I can't fry it with the pork still in the pot, so we're gonna drain all of the oil out of the pot, then put the ground pork aside, scraping everything out of the pot. Now we re-add our oil and turn the heat up high, and once it begins to smoke, we're going to add our potatoes. Remember, this is not to cook the potato, it's simply just to get a crust and sear on them before we actually boil them fully throughout. While we let them fry, we're going to go ahead and boil our water in a separate kettle just so we can speed things up a little bit. And about 6 minutes frying, I'm trying to be careful and not accidentally burn the potatoes because it's gonna give it a pretty bad taste if we do that. But as you can see, we've gotten some color on them, so this should add to the overall flavor of the soup. Now that our water is fully boiled, we're just gonna drop it all in carefully, slowly, and obviously we're not trying to, blow up the kitchen. So do it slowly and don't, let it boil over. Now we drop the heat to medium, add in our ground pork and 2 thinly sliced garlic cloves. While the potato is boiling, we can take this time to chop our kale. Of course, when you're boiling a leafy vegetable like this, you have to remember to use a bit more than you think you need because it will wilt and shrink. So all this you see in the bowl looks like a lot, but it's really going to shrink down to very little. And I also didn't use all the kale because I'm not trying to eat all that. Oh, and if you're wondering what that is on the right side of the screen, that's my entire collection of Diary of the Wimpy Kid books that I'm using as a tripod. Thank you. We let the soup boil for around 15 minutes, and now we can add in our kale. And be sure to really let the kale boil with the whole soup. If you don't and the kale is still green, when you try to eat it, it's gonna just taste very leafy and very strong and maybe even bitter. So be sure to really just boil the kale down. Obviously not until it's like a mush, but make sure you cook the kale all the way through. A few minutes of boiling later, we can now add our cream And honestly, this is like one of the most important parts of the soup. You can like leave out the kale or replace the sausage or replace the potato, but the cream is very important, and it actually gives the soup its whole texture entirely. Next, I'm gonna add my 2 most used spices in the kitchen, garlic powder and cayenne. If you think that this is too much cayenne, then you might want to try dining over here instead. And of course, I know I already added the garlic cloves, but just, you know, extra garlic doesn't hurt. After letting the soup simmer for another minute, we can go ahead and taste for salt. Since this is my first time making the soup, of course, there was, you know, something I did wrong. I added a bit too much salt and ended up over boiling the soup, making it a lot thicker than it needed to be. So every time I eat it now from the pot, I kind of just add a bit more water and mix it through before I heat it up. So just remember, this is a soup, you know, not a stew. Just make sure it's, you know, fairly watery and not too salty. You could just save this for your own bowl, but I'll just mix it for the entire pot because I know my family will like it. But remember, this is pre-shaved Parmesan. Do not be like my mom and buy pre-shaved Parmesan. Buy the block or buy the little wedge and shave it yourself. Do not buy it like this, all right? And lastly, we will add our bacon bits. If you're asking, wait, why didn't you add them all? Well, it's because I'm a greedy little boy and I want extra for myself, all right? All right. And now we just plate up. I'm kind of trying a carnivore diet at the moment, and this obviously doesn't follow carnivore, so I didn't pour up too much. And it's especially thick because I was using the mixing spoon to pour the soup instead of a ladle, so I barely got any of the actual, you know, water in it. Adding a bit more cayenne because I like when my food hurts my mouth. A bit more lazy cheese. And remember those green onions. Trust me, this is actually the best part of the soup. It makes the soup. I don't know why, but trust me, if you're gonna make this recipe, make sure you add the green onions. But yeah, let's just go ahead and taste. Gotta get in my little stance. And it's delicious because of course it is. It's my mom's recipe, so it better be good. This is the first time I've ever made this soup, and it's definitely not going to be the last. I'm kind of happy with the small improvements that I made to it, and I'll try to let her know about it so maybe she can try it out too. That's basically this episode of Serve. If you've liked it, thank you very much. Thank you, Mom, of course, for the recipe and cooking for me for all these years and teaching me how to cook. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe, and if not, I'll give you a reason to tomorrow.